My name is Daniel Mercer, and what I'm about to tell you happened on the night of October 21st, 1994. I was 34 then, running freight through the Southwest, working the graveyard shift the way I always preferred it. My rig was a 1985 Peterbilt 359, a machine I knew inside and out. Its hum like a heartbeat I trusted more than my own. That night, I was hauling electronics, leaving El Paso after sundown, bound for Phoenix. The run was one I'd made more times than I could count, across U.S. Highway 380, through the endless black of the New Mexico desert. But this time, this one night, it didn't feel like the others. The air had that sharp autumn bite, dry enough that every breath seemed to scrape your lungs. The desert stretched out around me like an ocean of shadow, the kind of vast emptiness that makes you feel both free and small. Out here, there are no streetlights, no glow from distant cities. Just the stars, scattered thick across the sky, burning so low and so bright that you almost feel you could reach up and pluck one from the heavens. My windows were cracked open, letting the smell of sagebrush drift in, earthy and sharp, mixed with the faint sting of diesel from my own exhaust. The radio was mostly dead, just a low static hum broken now and then by voices of other truckers, tired and half-bored, checking in with each other across the CB. But mostly, there was silence, just the deep, steady rumble of the engine and the endless whine of my tires, grinding against asphalt. I've always liked the night runs more than the day. In daylight, you're fighting cars, construction, endless stops. At night, it's just you, the machine, and the road. It has a rhythm to it, almost meditative, like the world shrinks down to a strip of highway lit by your headlights, and everything else fades away. But even with that comfort, I remember something gnawed at me that night, a feeling I couldn't pin down, sitting deep in my gut, telling me the desert wasn't as empty as it looked. I told myself it was just fatigue. I'd been on the road since noon, chasing miles, cutting back on sleep. But it was more than tiredness. It was pressure, a kind of quiet dread that clung to me mile after mile. Around midnight, I passed near Carrizozo, one of those little towns you could blink and miss. A scattering of lights off in the distance, a few motels, maybe a gas station or two, nothing more. Most drivers wouldn't give it a thought, but I always noticed places like that. Out in the desert, small towns feel almost fragile, like they're holding on to existence by the thinnest thread. I didn't plan to stop there. I had a couple of hours before my next fuel break, and I was making good time. But that feeling of unease only grew heavier. My eyelids were getting heavy too, and I knew better than to push it when the road starts to blur. Out here, one wrong move and you don't just wreck, you vanish into the sand. Another ghost of the highway. So when I saw the glow of a rest area sign up ahead, I made the choice. I'd pull off, stretch my legs, drink some coffee from my thermos, maybe even catch a 20-minute nap before pressing on. Nothing unusual, nothing out of the ordinary. At least, that's what I thought at the time. The lot was empty when I pulled in. No semis, no cars, not even a lone pickup. Just me and the whisper of desert wind curling around the concrete. The lamps lining the lot gave off a weak orange glow, buzzing faintly, their halos barely piercing the dark. I parked near the far end, killed the engine, and climbed down from the cab. The silence hit me harder than I expected. Out on the road, you always had the hum of the truck, the rattle of the trailer. Here, nothing but my own footsteps, crunching gravel and the faint rattle of a loose sign swaying in the breeze. I stretched, rolled my shoulders, trying to shake off the road fatigue. My thermos sat heavy in my hand, the smell of bitter coffee wafting up as I unscrewed the cap. That's when I noticed it, another vehicle I hadn't seen when I pulled in, parked off to the side near the restrooms, half in shadow. A Buick Electra, late 70s by the look of it, paint faded, bumpers sagging like it hadn't been cared for in years. Its chrome glinted faintly under the lamp, and the windshield reflected just enough to hide the inside. At first I thought maybe someone was asleep inside, another tired traveler catching a break. But the longer I looked at it, the more wrong it felt. Something about the way it sat there, too still, like it had been abandoned. But not for long. And then I saw the trunk. The lid wasn't shut all the way, just cracked open enough for the lamplight to catch what was inside. A shirt, white, or maybe it had been once. The fabric was stiff, stained dark in patches, dried to a rusty brown. Blood. The air seemed to thin around me. My throat went dry. I took a step back, coffee sloshing in the thermos, my ears straining for any sound that might explain it away. That's when I heard it. From inside the restroom building, low, steady, unmistakable. The scrape of metal against stone. A long, deliberate drag, over and over. That sound, the slow, steady scrape, slid across the pavement like it was carving straight into my bones. I stood frozen, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Wind maybe, or some animal nosing around the trash bins. But the longer I listened, the more I knew better. This wasn't random. It was rhythm. Steel grinding against stone, deliberate, measured, like someone sharpening a blade. My eyes fixed on the restroom building. Its windows were clouded with grime, glass smeared with years of dirt and graffiti. But one of them glowed faintly with a sickly yellow light. It flickered just enough to let me know someone was inside. The sound was coming from there. I should have turned back. Should have walked to my truck, climbed in, and driven until I couldn't see that Buick in my mirrors anymore. But instead, I found myself moving forward. Slow, careful, like each step was a choice I'd already regret. The gravel under my boots crunched louder than thunder in the silence. Every time a stone popped under my weight, my chest tightened, waiting for the sound to carry, waiting for whoever was inside to notice. When I reached the side of the building, I pressed my hand to the wall. The concrete was cold, gritty, rough against my palm. I slid along it until I reached the window, wiped a circle of dirt away with the back of my sleeve, and leaned in just enough to see. That's when I saw him. The figure inside was bent over a small workbench, his back slightly hunched, shoulders wiry and sharp under a ragged shirt. His hair was wild, greasy, hanging over his face in unkempt clumps. And in his hands, resting steady against a block of stone, was a hunting knife. Long, thick, the kind of blade built for skinning, not cooking. He was pulling it across the stone in smooth strokes, each one sending sparks of reflected light bouncing off the blade. The scraping sound that had haunted me from outside was suddenly deafening, echoing inside that small room. But it wasn't just the act of sharpening. It was how he did it. There was no rush in his movements. No absent-minded fiddling like someone idly passing the time. His expression was locked, focused, eyes narrowed on the blade like it was the only thing in the world. Each pass was exact, precise, like he'd done it 1,000 times. His lips moved too, whispering something I couldn't make out. Words meant for no one but him and that knife. My breath fogged against the glass, and I pulled back fast, terrified he might see it. I stood there, my heart slamming against my ribs, every nerve in me screaming to run, to get back in the truck, to get away. But I couldn't move. I was rooted to the spot, watching, knowing in my gut this wasn't just some drifter, wasn't some vagrant hiding out for the night. This man had purpose, deliberate, dark purpose. And then, in that instant of stillness, I realized the truth that made my stomach drop. That shirt in the Buick trunk, the blood caked into it, it wasn't an accident. It wasn't old history. Whoever this man was, he was connected to it. This wasn't coincidence. I had stumbled right into the orbit of someone. Dangerous, someone who didn't sharpen. Knives for hunting deer. I leaned back, sucking in a shaky breath, trying to steady myself. My hand brushed against the gravel at my feet, and one sharp stone shifted, scraping loudly under my boot. The sound snapped through the silence like a gunshot. Inside, the man froze mid-stroke. His head lifted. Slowly, his hair parted just enough for me to see his eyes. Wide, pale, gleaming even through the filthy glass. He wasn't just looking up. He was looking directly at me. The moment our eyes locked through that grimy window, the night changed. Everything in me went cold. He didn't move at first, just froze with the knife still clutched in his hand. His head tilted slightly like a predator catching sight of prey. My stomach dropped, and for a split second, I thought maybe he couldn't really see me. Maybe it was too dark outside. Maybe I was just a shape against the night. But then the corner of his mouth twitched into something I can't call a smile. It wasn't joy. It wasn't surprise. It was recognition. He knew I was there. I stumbled back from the wall, boots crunching on gravel, heart pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. The scrape of the knife stopped. Silence. Then the slam of a chair. The crash of something knocked over inside. The sound of footsteps moving fast, closing the distance to the door. I turned, running before the thought even formed. Legs pumping, lungs burning as I bolted across the lot toward my rig. The night seemed to stretch with every step. the truck farther away than it had any right to be. Behind me, the door burst open, crashing against the concrete, and his voice cut through the stillness. Low, furious, animal. A shout that didn't sound like words, just raw rage spilling into the desert air. The pounding of his boots followed, faster than I wanted to believe. I didn't dare look back, but I could hear him gaining, his breath sharp, jagged, closing the space between us. The knife was in his hand. I didn't need to see it to know. I could feel it in the way the air seemed to split with each step he took. The cab of my Peterbilt was just ahead, the silver of the door handle catching the faint glow of the streetlight. I reached it, slammed my hand against the handle, yanked it open. My boot slipped on the step. My heart lurched, but I pulled myself up, scrambling inside with a desperation I'd never felt in my life. My hands shook so bad I dropped the keys once, cursed under my breath, grabbed them off the floor, jammed them into the ignition. Behind me, his footsteps pounded closer, closer, until I heard the slap of palms hit metal. He was at the truck. The jolt of his hand smacking against the door rattled through the cab like a gunshot. I turned the key, engine roaring to life just as the knife scraped against the side panel. The sound shrill and piercing, sparks flying as steel met paint. I shoved the shifter into gear, slammed my foot on the gas. The truck lurched forward, tires shrieking against the pavement, smoke rising in thick curls. In the mirror, I caught one last glimpse, him standing in the middle of the road, chest heaving, knife glinting under the streetlight. His figure was frozen, a silhouette of rage. His eyes locked on me even as I pulled farther and farther away. He didn't chase this time. He didn't need to. He just stood there, still as stone, like he was memorizing me, etching my face into his mind. I drove blind with panic, my hands white-knuckled on the wheel, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. The desert blurred past me, mile markers flashing like ghosts in the corner of my vision. I didn't know how long I kept the speedometer pinned, didn't know how many miles I put between me and that rest stop. All I knew was the image of him standing there never left my mirror, long after I'd outrun the glow of the lamps. Even when the road grew empty again, when there was nothing but black sky and endless sand around me, I felt him, like he was still back there, pacing slowly in that lot, waiting for another trucker, another stranger, to wander too close, waiting to finish what he'd started. I didn't stop driving until the sky began to pale, the first hints of dawn bleeding across the desert horizon. By then, I was nearly 3 hours past my scheduled route, far from where I was supposed to be, the fuel gauge sinking low. My hands were still shaking, knuckles sore from gripping the wheel, jaw tight from clenching it through every mile. Every time I blinked, I saw him again, the knife catching the light, his pale eyes burning through the glass, that twitch of his mouth when he realized I was watching him. I finally pulled into a truck stop just outside Socorro, New Mexico. The neon sign buzzed above the lot, the smell of frying bacon drifting out from the diner inside. Truckers moved around casually, fueling their rigs, swapping stories, laughing like the night had been nothing but miles and music. I stepped out of my cab like I was stepping into another world, a world where nothing had happened, where rest stops weren't filled with rusting cars and bloodstained shirts. But I knew better. I went inside, poured myself a cup of coffee, sat at a corner booth with my back to the wall. The chatter around me was steady, familiar, but it didn't touch me. My eyes kept scanning the lot through the window, half expecting to see that Buick pulled in, half expecting to see him step out, knife still in hand, face turned toward me. Instead, I saw only strangers. Truckers, tourists, families with kids, normal people on normal trips. For them, the desert was just scenery. For me, it had become something else entirely. Eventually, I forced myself to make a call. Payphone in the corner, cold receiver pressed against my ear. I told the operator I needed the New Mexico State Police, gave them the location of the rest stop, described the Buick, described the man, described the shirt I'd found. My voice shook as I spoke, but I made myself say it all. They promised to send someone to check. I hung up, staring at my reflection in the dull metal of the phone, wondering if I'd just made a mistake. Hours later, I heard back. A trooper I spoke to on the CB said they'd gone out there, searched the lot. No Buick, no man, no shirt, nothing but an empty rest stop, as if it had swallowed everything whole. He told me maybe I'd been tired, maybe I'd misremembered, but I knew what I'd seen. I knew what had chased me. And here's the part that's never left me. A week later, flipping through a copy of the Albuquerque Journal, I found a short article tucked away on the inside pages. A body had been discovered in the desert, not far from Carrizozo. A drifter, young. The description was vague, but the detail stuck with me. A shirt matching the one I saw in that Buick's trunk. Blood soaking the fabric. The article didn't mention a suspect. Didn't mention a knife. Just another lost life in the emptiness of the New Mexico desert. That was 30 years ago. I've driven that highway hundreds of times since. But I've never stopped at that rest area again. Some nights, when the road is dark and the CB is silent, I still see him standing in my mirror. Eyes locked on mine, waiting. And every time I pass that stretch near Carrizozo, I feel it, the weight in my gut, the pressure in the air, like he's still out there, sharpening that knife, waiting for the next trucker to pull in. The night was heavy on Highway 67, one of those Arkansas nights, where the humidity clings to your skin and the air tastes like damp soil and diesel. I'd been running loads since dawn, my eyes stinging. My body sore from 12 straight hours behind the wheel. The world outside my windshield was swallowed in darkness. The only light coming from the glow of my dashboard and the weak halo of my headlights, cutting through the mist that hung low over the asphalt. Most nights, the road is my only company. The hum of the tires, the occasional whisper of the CB, maybe a lonely song drifting in from a station barely strong enough to reach me. But that night, the silence felt different, thicker, weighted, like the highway itself was holding its breath. And then I saw him. At first, it was just a shadow up ahead, swaying unsteady along the shoulder. A hitchhiker, maybe, though hitchhikers had grown rare by '98. As I drew closer, the figure took shape, tall, lean, with a jacket that looked more like it had survived a war than a winter. His hair hung wild over his face, and when my lights caught him full, I saw the raw desperation in his eyes. I slowed, against every instinct, against every story I'd ever heard about the dangers of picking up strangers. I slowed that rig and rolled to a stop beside him. He staggered up to the door, and when I cranked the window down, I caught the smell, sweat, smoke, something coppery beneath it. His voice was ragged, low, almost pleading. "You headed south?" I hesitated, just for a second. Then I nodded. "Hop in." He climbed up into the cab, his movements stiff, nervous. He settled into the passenger seat, clutching an old duffel bag so tight I thought the fabric might tear under his grip. I offered my hand. "Name's Calvin." He didn't take it, just stared ahead, his jaw tight. Finally, he muttered, "Eddie." No last name, no small talk, just Eddie. The road stretched on, dark and endless. And with every mile I could feel the weight of him sitting there. Not just his body, but whatever shadow he carried with him. His fingers tapped against the duffel in some restless rhythm. And every time headlights flared behind us, he stiffened, shrinking down into the seat like a hunted animal. I wanted to ask questions. Lord knows I did. But something in his silence warned me off. And so we drove, two strangers bound together by nothing more than a stretch of Arkansas highway, and a night that already felt like it was leading us somewhere neither of us should go. The road stretched on in silence, the hum of the tires filling the cab, a dull white noise masking the storm that brewed inside that man beside me. I glanced at him in the glow of the dash. His face was gaunt, hollow-cheeked, eyes rimmed with sleepless nights. His fingers never stopped drumming against that duffel bag, an endless nervous beat. Finally, I tried to break it. "You from around here?" His jaw tightened. A pause. Then, flatly, "No." That was it. Nothing more. I swallowed, glanced back at the road, headlights carving a path through the mist. He shifted in his seat, pulling the duffel closer, like even my question had pressed him too far. We passed miles of nothing, fields swallowed in fog, the occasional shuttered gas station, neon signs buzzing weak against the dark. The world felt abandoned, emptied out, like it was just the two of us left driving through it. It wasn't until the diner lights appeared that the silence cracked. A small building off the shoulder, neon flickering Shady Oaks Diner, the kind of place that survives on coffee and truckers like me. My stomach growled, and I figured maybe some food might ease the tension between us. I eased the rig off the road. Eddie's head snapped up, his eyes wide for a second before he masked it with a quick nod. "Food sounds good." Inside, the diner smelled of grease and old coffee. The walls yellowed with smoke. The kind of joint where time barely moves. A waitress with tired eyes led us to a booth by the window. We sat. Eddie kept his back to the wall, duffel pressed against his leg. He scanned the room like a soldier in hostile territory, eyes darting from face to face, never resting long. The waitress poured coffee. I sipped. Eddie just wrapped his hands around the cup, staring down into the black surface like it might tell his fortune. Finally, I leaned in. Look, Eddie, whatever's eating you, you can trust me. I've been on this road a long time. Seen things. Helped folks. You don't gotta carry it alone. His eyes flicked up, hard and sharp. For a second, I thought he might snap. Instead, he whispered, low, nearly trembling. They're coming. They don't stop. Ever. Before I could ask who, the bell above the diner door jingled. 2 men walked in, and the whole room went still. The bell above the door jingled like a warning bell, faint, delicate, but sharp enough to slice through the hum of the diner. I didn't turn right away, but I felt it, the shift in the air, the silence that rippled across the room like a wave. When I finally looked, they were already inside. 2 men, not locals, not here for coffee. You could tell by the way they moved. One tall, broad shoulders under a black jacket, his face carved into a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. The other shorter, wiry, his coat hanging heavy on one side. The way a coat hangs when steel's weighing it down. They didn't head for a booth, didn't ask for a menu. They just stopped inside the door, eyes scanning the room. Searching. Eddie froze. His hand slid under the table, clutching at that duffel like it was a lifeline. His breath quickened, chest rising and falling sharp and fast. I saw sweat bead at his temple, his jaw clenching so tight the muscles twitched. The taller one's eyes swept the booths. Casual, almost lazy, until they landed on ours. His smile stretched wider. Evening. Just one word. Calm. Easy. But it turned the air colder. The shorter man stayed by the door, his hand buried in his coat, his stare fixed and unblinking. Eddie leaned in close, his whisper hot against my ear, trembling. Don't say my name. Don't move. Don't. His words cut off as the taller man stepped closer. He didn't rush, just sauntered, as if he had all the time in the world. His eyes never left Eddie. You boys from around here? His voice was smooth, polite, but every syllable carried weight, heavy as stone. I swallowed. My mouth felt dry, just passing through. He chuckled, soft, like he'd heard the line 1,000 times. His gaze flicked between me and Eddie, resting longer on him. That's so. The waitress hovered nearby, frozen, her pen shaking in her hand. The couple in the far booth sank lower in their seats. The whole diner felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for something we all knew was about to happen. Eddie's hand trembled under the table. His eyes locked on the taller man's smile. And in that moment, I realized Eddie hadn't just been running. He'd been hunted. The diner was too quiet. The kind of quiet that isn't natural, the kind that smothers you, presses down on your chest until every breath feels stolen. The 2 strangers stood there, eyes cutting through the smoke-stained air, one smiling, one stone-faced, both of them waiting for something they already knew was coming. The taller man let his gaze sweep across the room again. He didn't rush. He didn't need to. He owned the room now, and every soul inside it felt it. His smile stretched wider, polite as Sunday morning. Folks around here, he said softly, they like to talk. We don't like talk. The waitress froze by the counter, her notepad hanging loose in her hand. The couple in the far booth sank lower into their seats. The cook ducked back into the kitchen, pans clattering nervously. Everyone wanted to vanish, to disappear before that man's eyes landed on them. But his eyes never left me. Eddie sat rigid beside me, the tapping of his fingers stopping cold. His jaw clenched, and his breath came slow and even now, as if he'd accepted something I hadn't. The taller man stepped closer, his boots clicking against the linoleum, each step slow, deliberate. You sure you didn't see anyone out there tonight? My mouth opened, but nothing came out. The shorter man at the door shifted, his hand still buried inside that coat. His eyes, dark, empty, fixed squarely on Eddie now. Not on me, not on the waitress. Eddie. Eddie finally spoke, his voice low, steady, almost calm. They won't stop asking, Calvin. You can lie all you want, but they already know. Hearing my name in that moment sent a chill down my spine. He hadn't said it once before, and now, with those men standing there, he spoke it like it was his last truth. The taller man's smile faded into something colder. His hand slid into his jacket. Slow, careful. My breath caught. The waitress gasped. Then Eddie moved. He shot up from the booth, the chair screeching against the tile. His hand came out of that ragged jacket pocket, and I saw the glint of steel, an old revolver. Scarred and scratched, but steady in his grip. The waitress screamed. The couple in the back booth ducked low, plates clattering to the floor. For a second, nobody moved. It was a frozen tableau, the taller man's hand inside his jacket. The shorter one by the door coiled like a spring. Eddie standing with the revolver aimed dead center at the man. Then Eddie's voice broke the stillness. It wasn't trembling. It wasn't weak. It was sharp, commanding. Back. Away. From the door. The shorter man's lip curled into the faintest smirk. He didn't move. Eddie cocked the hammer. The sound cut through the diner like a gunshot itself. Do it. Finally, the tall one lifted his hands, slow, palms open. That polite smile returned, but this time it was poison. You really think you can walk out of here alive, Lawson? The name dropped like a stone into water, sending ripples through the room. My chest tightened. Eddie Lawson. They knew him. They'd been looking for him. Eddie didn't flinch. His eyes were locked, hard, unblinking. I've been walking dead a long time. Tonight, I walk out. The taller man's smile faltered, just for a fraction of a second. The shorter one by the door shifted, shoulders tensing. The waitress whimpered, whispering under her breath, "Lord, help us." My palms were slick. My mind screamed at me to move, to run, to do something. But I was caught in the storm, watching it unfold like a man in a nightmare he couldn't wake from. And then, Eddie's eyes flicked to me, just for a heartbeat. A silent plea, a warning, maybe even a goodbye. Then the door blew open again, the bell jingling faint and delicate, almost mocking. A third figure stepped in. The bell above the door jingled again, a thin, fragile sound. So out of place against the storm inside that diner. All eyes turned, even the two men, even Eddie. The third figure stepped in, tall, broad-shouldered. His coat flapped, opened slightly as he crossed the threshold. And in that split second, I caught sight of it, another gun, holstered under his arm, gleaming dull in the neon light. The air grew heavier, like the walls themselves were pressing in. The taller man's smile returned, faint and sharp. Well, look who finally caught up. Eddie's grip tightened on the revolver, his knuckles white. His eyes darted between the two men and the newcomer, his breath steady but shallow. "Stay back," he barked, voice sharp, commanding. "Don't you take another step." But the third man didn't listen. His boots clicked against the tile as he walked slow, deliberate, toward the counter. He didn't even glance at me, didn't acknowledge the waitress sobbing against the wall, or the couple curled under their booth. His eyes were locked on Eddie, like nothing else in the world existed. "Lawson," he said, his voice low, steady, with the weight of years behind it. "It's over. You've run far enough." Eddie's shoulders rose and fell. His jaw clenched. He looked tired. Not weak, not broken, just tired, like a man who'd been running his whole life. And now, finally, the road ended here. He raised the revolver higher, aiming squarely at the third man. "Over." His voice cracked, just slightly. "It's never over." The shorter man near the door shifted again, coiling tighter, ready to strike. The taller one's smile was gone now, his hand frozen inside his jacket. And me? I sat frozen in that booth, my heart clawing at my ribs. My palms slick, my throat burning. Every instinct screamed at me to move, to dive, to run, but I couldn't. I was rooted to that vinyl seat, trapped in the middle of a nightmare I didn't ask for. Then it happened. The third man moved first, hand flashing to his side. Eddie fired. The revolver roared, deafening inside that little diner. The shot slammed into the counter, splintering wood, sending mugs and napkins flying. The waitress screamed, covering her ears. The shorter man lunged, drawing his gun, but Eddie swung fast, his second shot cracking through the air, shattering the front window in a rain of glass. Chaos erupted. The couple crawled under their table. The cook shouted from the back, pans clanging to the floor. The taller man drew his weapon at last, his movements calm, precise, deadly. Eddie turned the revolver on him, eyes blazing. I said back, but his hands were shaking now. Not much, but enough. Enough for the taller man to see. The third man raised his gun, steady as stone. And in that instant, I saw it on Eddie's face. Not fear, Not rage. Acceptance. The revolver slipped just slightly in his grip, and I knew. He wasn't aiming to win. He was aiming to finish. He fired again. The taller man staggered, the bullet grazing his arm, tearing fabric and flesh. He cursed, gun dropping to the floor with a clatter. But the third man shot was true. The crack echoed like thunder, and Eddie jerked back, the revolver flying from his hand. He stumbled, eyes wide, then collapsed against the booth, clutching his chest. No, the word ripped out of me before I even knew I was speaking. The waitress cried out. The couple in the corner gasped. The shorter man by the door froze, eyes darting to his fallen partner. Eddie's breaths came fast, shallow. Blood spread across his shirt, dark and heavy. His eyes flicked up to me, wide, desperate, but calm in some strange way. He tried to speak, his lips trembling. I leaned closer, my voice shaking. Eddie, stay with me. Stay with me. He managed a faint smile, barely there, his voice no louder than a whisper. Told you, they'd never stop. His head fell back against the booth. His hand slid from the wound, limp, lifeless. The revolver lay on the floor between us, smoking, spent. The third man holstered his weapon, slow, deliberate. He didn't look at me, didn't look at Eddie. He just turned to the taller man, now clutching his bleeding arm. Clean it up, he muttered. And then they left. The bell jingled as the door shut behind them, gentle, almost mocking. The broken window let the night air pour in, cold and sharp. I sat there in the booth, Eddie Lawson's body slumped against me, blood soaking through my shirt. My hands trembled, my heart thundered, but I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't understand why any of it had happened. And yet, deep down I knew. Eddie hadn't been lying. He'd been running from something bigger than I could ever imagine. And those men? They weren't finished. Not by a long shot. The waitress sobbed in the corner. The couple whispered prayers under their breath. And me? I sat in the neon glow of that diner, staring at the revolver on the floor, wondering how much longer before they came back. Because Eddie was right. They don't stop. They never stop. The night began like any other, but if I'd known how it would end, I would have taken another road. It was late autumn, 2001. The Arkansas air sharp and biting as my rig ate up miles of blacktop. The sky was a low ceiling of clouds, heavy and silent, blotting out the stars. My headlights carved through the dark, twin beams stretching into nothing, and every so often, a thin fog rolled across the asphalt like restless spirits drifting through. Truckers know the road can play tricks on you, shadows that shift, lights that flicker, shapes that vanish when you look twice. But that night, it wasn't my mind playing games. Something was waiting out there, something real. The CB radio crackled, faint static filling the cab. No voices, just that low hiss, like a whisper you couldn't quite catch. I turned the knob, searching for chatter. Nothing. Dead air. Strange for that stretch of Highway 167. A route always alive with truckers calling in, swapping stories, warning each other of patrol cars or roadkill. That silence set my teeth on edge. I drummed my fingers on the wheel, trying to shake it off. The road stretched out before me, endless, empty. Then up ahead, I caught sight of a shape on the shoulder. At first, I thought it was just a deer. A big one, maybe. But as the headlights reached, the shape didn't move. It didn't scatter into the woods. It just stood there. A man. Tall. Thin. His clothes dark and ragged, his face pale, reflecting in the glow of my lights like chalk. He didn't wave. Didn't move. He just stood there on the shoulder, staring as I approached. I eased off the accelerator, my gut twisting. Something about him wasn't right. He wasn't hitchhiking. He wasn't stranded. He was waiting. I rolled past him, hands tight on the wheel, my eyes flicking to the side mirror. He was gone. Not walking away. Not standing there. Just gone. The CB crackled again, sharper this time. A burst of static that made me flinch. And then, faint, almost swallowed by the hiss. Turned back. My chest tightened. I leaned closer to the mic. Say again? Who's out there? Silence. Just that low, crawling static. The road stretched on, darker now, my headlights fighting harder against the fog. I tried to shake it off, tried to tell myself it was nothing, just fatigue, just the loneliness of the road. But deep down, I knew better. That man, whatever he was, wasn't done with me. And the night was only beginning. I reached Petoskey just past midnight, the streets half asleep. neon bleeding from the diner sign by the truck stop. It was the only place open, and my stomach gnawed from hours of road and silence. I parked the Peterbilt under the lot's lone lamp, its glow cutting a pale circle in the dark. The rig ticked and sighed as it cooled. Across the asphalt, a sedan sat quiet, engine off, no driver in sight. Inside, the diner smelled of burnt coffee and grease. A waitress with tired eyes poured me a cup before I asked, her hands moving on habit alone. The booths were empty, but for one man near the window. Thin frame, dark jacket, his head tilted slightly, as if listening to something far away. He didn't eat, didn't drink. He just watched the glass, his reflection caught between the neon and the dark. The waitress pretended not to notice him, but I did. Every trucker knows the look of a man who's waiting, not for food, not for company, but for a signal. I ate fast, nerves tight, eyes flicking back. When I left, the lot was the same, empty except for that sedan. Only this time, its headlights flared to life the moment I climbed back into my rig. They didn't pull out right away. They waited until I hit the road, the hum of my tires swallowing the night, before sliding in behind me, two steady beams stitching themselves into my mirrors. At first, I told myself it was nothing, just another late traveler. But miles passed, and they never fell back, never pulled alongside, never turned off. Just a steady presence behind me, silent and deliberate. Highway silence isn't real silence. It's hum and hiss, rubber grinding asphalt, wind clawing seams of steel. But that night, with those headlights in my mirror, it felt like silence anyway, thick, pressing, loud enough inside my chest to drown everything else. The road curled north, black as river water. Pines leaned over the shoulders, their branches breaking into the beams like claws. The glow behind me never wavered. Two dots, steady low, always the same distance. I flicked the CB again, hoping for chatter. A trucker heading south. A local warning about deer in the lane. Nothing, just static. The dead kind. Petoskey was less than 30 miles. But 30 miles in the dark feels like 300. When you're not sure if you're driving toward safety or deeper into something you'll never come back from. At the Bayview turnoff, I tried a trick, signaled left, drifted like I meant to take it, then cut hard and held straight north. Their lights held too, didn't even blink. So they wanted me. Not the rig, not the load. Me. The cab felt smaller by the mile, each breath sharper. I kept running the same question. Why? I wasn't hauling anything worth dying over. Just steel beams, strapped tight for a job site waiting 2 counties north. No cash, no cargo anyone would chase. Unless this wasn't about freight. Unless it never was. A memory pressed in. The diner. The way the first one looked at me. The way the second one never moved. They weren't improvising. They'd studied. They'd rehearsed. Like actors in a play I hadn't agreed to join. At a long straight stretch I dropped a gear, let the Peterbilt groan, and stomped heavy on the throttle. The rig surged, trailer rattling. The speedometer needle creeping past the comfort line. For a second the mirrors showed nothing but dark. I thought maybe I'd shaken them. Then the glow returned. Same distance. Same calm. Not chasing. Not lagging. Just holding me. Like they had all the time in the world. The land dropped toward water. Little Traverse Bay, black and endless on the left. A sign whipped past. Petoskey 12. 12 miles. But 12 miles can be too far. When you're carrying weight and fear. And something you can't name. I spotted the pullover ahead. One of those gravel cuts the county keeps for plows and breakdowns. I killed the lights, swerved hard, and rolled in rough. Gravel crunched under my tires, loud as gunfire in the night. I cut the engine, dropped the cab into black. Nothing, just night. I held my breath, listened, waited. The glow slid by on the highway, slow, deliberate. For one heartbeat, relief spread through me. They'd gone. Then, in the mirror, the red glow of brake lights. They'd stopped. I stayed still, hands clenched on the wheel, heartbeat hammering the quiet. The sedan idled out there, engine low. A door opened. A shape stepped into the dark. Not rushing, not fumbling, just moving with the kind of patience that says a man already knows the ending. The night pressed so close it felt alive. I stayed still, every muscle locked, listening through the glass, through the steel, straining past the tick of cooling metal, and the faint creak of straps, settling on the load, out on the shoulder. Footsteps, slow, crunch of gravel, measured, like someone counting seconds with each step. I leaned forward, eyes fixed on the mirror. A figure moved into view, half lit, half swallowed by the dark. Same height, same gait as the one from the lot. The smile I'd seen before wasn't on his face now. He was blank, hollow. I slid my hand under the seat, fingers wrapping cold steel. The pistol was heavy, familiar, the kind of weight that steadies you even when it scares you. But lifting it, showing it, that would end the waiting. And some part of me needed to know what they were waiting for. He stopped 10 feet from the cab, close enough that I could see the pale shine of his eyes. He didn't shout, didn't demand. He just lifted his hand, one finger pointing toward the trailer. I shook my head, mouthing words he couldn't hear. Not yours. He lowered his hand, and then he smiled. Not wide, not mocking, just a small curl, like he'd gotten exactly what he wanted. Behind him, the sedan's headlights snapped off. Darkness swallowed the road. The second man was gone from the driver's seat. My chest tightened. Two shadows in a night this deep could be anywhere. I fired the engine back to life, gears screaming as I yanked the rig forward. Gravel sprayed, tires clawing for grip before catching and throwing me back onto the asphalt. The mirrors lit up again, twin beams flaring back to life behind me. They hadn't needed to chase before, but now they wanted me to know they were there. The highway narrowed, cutting through a wall of trees that leaned in heavy, branches twisting overhead. I pushed the Peterbilt hard, the speedometer edging past where I usually trusted her. The trailer shuddered, the whole rig groaning like it might come apart. Still, the lights held, always the same distance. Petoskey's glow rose faint ahead, city lights hazy in the low clouds. Safety, I told myself. Just hold on. Just get there. But as the road straightened, a second pair of lights appeared ahead. Low, waiting. My gut dropped. They weren't behind anymore. They were in front too. The rig roared between them, one set of headlights pressing from the rear, the other drawing closer from the north. A trap tightening by the mile. My hands locked on the wheel, sweat stinging my eyes. I played every card I knew. Outrun them, outmaneuver them, trick them with dark and silence. Nothing worked, which meant I was wrong from the start. This wasn't about chase. It was about hurting, and I was being driven somewhere I hadn't chosen. The lights ahead grew brighter, cutting across the Tulane blacktop, steady and low. My chest tightened as I realized it wasn't just another car. It was them, waiting like they'd known all along I'd come this way. The sedan behind me never faltered, never closed in, never fell back. It was the same measured distance, like a tether keeping me locked in the middle. Front and back, I was pinned. The highway dipped, then rose into a stretch where the trees pulled back and the bay opened on my left. Black water catching what little glow leaked from the clouded sky. To my right, woods pressed tight, thick enough to swallow a manhole. No side roads, no turnoffs, just this straight stretch funneling me forward. My rig groaned under the weight, steel beams clanking in rhythm, the trailer swaying against every push of wind. I gripped the wheel harder, my knuckles aching, telling myself if I could just keep steady, keep breathing, I'd find a crack somewhere. Then I saw it. Up ahead, past the curve, a side road peeled off toward the bay. Narrow, dirt, more path than road. A risk. My load wasn't built for it. The weight could shift, straps could snap. The whole rig could tip if I cut wrong. But it was the only chance I had. I killed the headlights, heart hammering, and swung hard into the turn. Gravel spat out from under me, the trailer screaming in protest as it fishtailed wide. I wrestled it straight, the steering wheel biting my palms raw. Behind me, the sedan's lights tore past, carrying on north, too slow to catch the turn. For the first time that night, I thought maybe I'd broken free. The dirt road narrowed quick, trees leaning in, branches raking the trailer with claws of bark and twigs. My beams cut tunnels of light through dust that rose thick as smoke. The bay flashed through breaks in the trees, black water rolling under the cloudy sky. I drove until the road broke into a clearing. A flat stretch of gravel pressed up against the bay's edge. I stopped there, engine idling heavy, lungs burning like I'd run miles on foot. For a long moment, nothing followed. No lights, no sound but the hum of my rig and the water lapping against the rocks. I let out a breath, slow, shaking, almost a laugh. Maybe they'd lost me. Maybe they weren't as perfect as they thought. Then, in the mirrors, light. Not one set. Two. They'd split. One followed the highway. The other had cut another way. Headlights slid into the clearing, crawling slow, calm as ever. The second set appeared moments later from the other side, closing the mouth of the road. I was boxed again. The sedan doors opened in unison, smooth and practiced. Figures stepped out, 3 now, not 2, each one standing still in the beams. Faces pale, clothes dark, like shadows given shape. The first one, the man from the diner lot, stepped forward. He didn't raise a weapon, didn't speak. He only lifted his hand again, finger pointing toward my rig, toward the load strapped on my trailer. Steel beams. That's all it was. Nothing worth this. Nothing worth hurting a man across counties, pinning him in the dark. Unless the load wasn't the point at all. My grip tightened on the wheel, and for the first time that night, I understood. It wasn't the freight. It wasn't the rig. It was me. And they'd finally stopped waiting. The engine hummed heavy. My hand hovered near the pistol. The decision sharp in my chest. Run, fight, or open the door and step into whatever they'd brought with them. The bay's black water stretched wide and endless beside me. The headlights cut through the clearing. Their eyes never left mine. And in that moment, with nowhere left to go, I knew the road hadn't led me here by mistake. It had delivered me.